you, everybody, for being here and so promptly. Normally, we have a couple of stragglers for the first 2 minutes or so, but I'm big on punctuality, so I will get started at 1 or so minutes past. Could I get a thumbs up or a wave in the chat just so I know that you can hear me and that everything is working okay? Thumbs up. Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so you can see me, you can see my screen, and you can hear me. If any of the above don't apply, please feel free to chuck it in the chat. Cool. Perfect. Okay. Thanks. Well, we will get started nice and quickly because I know how valuable your time is. And if anybody else is still joining, that's not a problem. We have, what do we have? Okay, so here's some big news is we had 212 people registered to this for this webinar, which is a pretty big indication of how much it's needed and how complicated these things have gotten in this day and age about what you can and what you can't do and what's allowed and what's not allowed. So please, you are not alone. This is a really important kind of takeaway from this. But equally, it's important to know that there are solutions and there is a way forward and that we can get on top of some of this. But in terms of, so normally we have about 30% of people that have registered turn up live. So we're getting close to that. We've got people on Teams, we've got some people on Facebook Live, and we've got a couple of people on YouTube. So if it looks like I'm not looking at the right place, forgive me. I have to check a few different chats. Okay, and Astra, you can't hear me. I had a thumbs up from others earlier. Anybody else have hearing troubles, or that could be on the receiving end? All right. It might be on your end because I did get a few other thumbs up suggesting that they could hear me okay. So I think we're okay my end. So if in doubt, turn it off and on again. But yeah, okay. So others can hear me all right. So sorry, Anastri, I can't help you too much with that one. Try your various settings. And if in doubt, don't just try the Teams settings, try the settings on your computer because they go all over the place. I have that experience all the time. Okay, so kicking off, what are we here to talk about today? We're calling out poor behaviors, which sadly is more needed than we really would like it to be. It is a reality of what we do. And a lot of people just fumble around. Am I allowed to? What am I allowed to say in public? How do I get on top of it? I know that I can't just let it go, but also, you know, by the time we've missed the moment, we've missed the moment, and then it seems weird and awkward to bring it up, or particularly if you're recently a manager or new to this or just kind of low conflict, it can feel really high conflict and it can feel like something that's uncomfortable. But we're going to chat through the ways to make it pretty low conflict and try to make it accessible for anybody to call anybody out on things that just really aren't right. And just to be clear about poor behaviors, obviously the array of that is huge, vast. But really, I'm fixating a lot on what we'd call incivility. So if you haven't heard the term incivility, really what it means is those things that are technically not unprofessional. You know, you haven't breached a code of conduct, you haven't done something that's really easy to just kind of go, that was wrong, that's against our rules. But equally, we know that it's not super respectful behavior. So we're talking about things like eye rolling, like sighing, like little snide passive aggressive comments, or gossip. That's a huge incivility. Or things that are more like, you know, just body language and tone and sarcasm, that it's really hard to sort of define to say you can't say that, because often what they were saying, they know what they're doing. They're skirting the lines of professionalism. But we all know that it doesn't feel good, right? We all know that when it happens, there's kind of a vibe and everybody's a bit uncomfortable. Or worse, it's gotten so normal now that people aren't even that uncomfortable, which is significantly more serious because it says that now it's gone unmanaged for long enough that people just see that as normal, which is absolutely the last thing we want. So, quick intro to me, just so you know that I do have some idea what I'm talking about. My background is actually as a veterinarian, but I was never a very good clinician. I have a mind for people, not detail. So I went into leadership quite early on, and I've done various cool things. I've run local government animal management units. I've managed, 100 people sort of specialty veterinary hospitals. I was the manager of wildlife health for Taronga Zoo for a while, which, yes, is actually as cool a job as you would think it is. When I was younger, I was the CEO of RSPCAs. So really kind of the full gambit, but now effectively Unleashed Consulting, I am just about trying to make our jobs and our leadership sustainable, which means particularly, we all work in high emotionally driven, high accountability professions, right? We're healthcare, we're vets, we're community services. We're usually on the public eye. A mistake is often at best slaughtered on social media, sometimes even more significant than that. But also, you can't just bob that off of, oh, well, never mind. Like, these are emotionally charged people with highly passionate staff members. People don't tend to enter our industry if they don't care a lot, which we think is great, but does tend to come with some specific challenges. But really importantly, the other things that I focus on, because we most of us, particularly the veterinary profession, that resilience piece within our teams has been pushed for a number of years. We've focused a lot on compassion fatigue, on moral trauma and growth in those areas, and we've come a really long way. The awareness is there, even if maybe the the actual skills to overcome it are still a little bit academic. Sorry, excuse me. But also the thing that we never focus on is the leaders, because the leadership is often the people propping up the resilience of their teams, and everybody forgets about, well, what it's like to be a leader in the middle of almost always the most overworked, because you're the general dog's body that has to pick up all of the other stuff that isn't someone else's job. You're trying to be an emotional kind of saint for everybody else and why did I just get a hold on? I don't know what that little blip was. I apologize for that. I think I'm back. But the short version is that you guys very rarely get enough credit and get enough support for how hard your job is. So that is effectively what I do. I'm trying to improve our sustainability by working with the leaders and the teams. Also worth noting, I am also a mum and a dog mum. The reason I mention that is mostly because I get it. I get the juggle of emotionally and logistically trying to be all things to literally everybody. I'm a solo mum by choice, so all of the decision fatigue, all of the logistic running of everything is on me, which I don't think we can differentiate from how much of that we already do in the workplace. And unfortunately, the world does like to differentiate from those two things, but it's a burden. It's a challenge. Also worth noting, all of the tactics I'm going to teach you today work on children. So anybody that's in the same boat, highly recommend trying them. But effectively, what are we going to do? All right. Should we call out behaviors in real time? This is the real big question, because a lot of people think they're not allowed to. A lot of people think that we have to do performance management or have to be closed doors conversations. Legally, there are some fine lines. Okay. And I will talk about that on the next slide, about that kind of bullying or, calling people out in public. Are you allowed to do that? Because of course, performance management is confidential. So we'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But really, I want to make it clear. Yes, you should. Okay. Because the problem is, if somebody does something passive aggressive, let's say makes a snarky passive aggressive comment to you or to another staff member in the middle of a team meeting, and you say nothing and you let it slide, what does that say to everyone else in the room? So it's not just about that one individual, is it? It's actually about everybody, because if they see that you did nothing, it doesn't matter if you know you're going to have a conversation behind closed doors later. They don't. And as a general rule, they probably won't give you the benefit of a doubt once it's happened a couple of times, right? So if people want to feel safe that you are going to protect them from those snide comments, if somebody's sort of making eye rolls every time another person speaks, we want to make it clear we are creating a safe environment for people. And if that creates a little bit of discomfort in the short term, because I'm going to make it awkward right now, I will keep you safe from those behaviors. And they look to you for that. That gives them a sense of safety and psychological safety, which they need. They also trust that you've got their back, that you're not going to leave them hanging out to dry. Okay. And even the person who's doing it, who will resent being called out on it probably for a little while, depending on their level of self-reflection skills, actually, most people are craving boundaries. They want to know where the line is. They want to know what's acceptable. So even though they'll push back on it for a little while, the truth is most people will respect you more for doing it. All right. They want you to be a pushover, a little bit like our kids want us to be pushovers, but actually they are better humans and they feel safer when they know where that line is. But lastly, I want to be really, really clear, because I'm going to touch on at the end as well about calling people out sideways as well. If we want our teams to not let these behaviors slide, we have to show that we're willing to do it. So if we let somebody make a passive aggressive comment to us, and it just goes unsaid, then that is subliminally the culture that you are allowing to continue when you're not in the room. Whereas if we can role model how to calmly and confidently and no drama call people on, now that you can't say that, then you give other people the permission and the skills to do it too. And that's what we really want. So if you are in the situation where this has gotten a bit out of hand and now that's kind of normalized, it has to start somewhere. And it has to start with you. So key point here is that if you don't name it, if you don't call it out, you're effectively acknowledging that that's part of who we are now. This is what we do and this is acceptable. Because if I won't call it out, no one else is going to. So the short answer is yes. Yes, you should. Okay. The can you, the legally, will I get in trouble? What does this look like? Now, this is, I have had this tested. I have been called for bullying. I have had a grievance against me because I publicly commented, all right? And I'm not going to pussyfoot around that. I'm not going to pretend to you that this never blows up in your face, because that's not helpful to set you up for success, right? What I want you to know for sure is that fully investigated, because of course we always do things by the book, fully investigated, there is no cause for a grievance, all right? So what the difference is firstly, compassionate and respectful communication, no drama, all calm. Okay. We're not picking on an individual. We're not sort of, it's not at you. It's not a sort of pointed, I am performance managing you, because performance managing is behind closed doors. But the other thing to be really clear on is cultural norms matter when it comes to, for example, a bullying complaint. Because remember, bullying has to assume that it is targeted. To meet the definition of you bullied me because you called me out in public, they have to be able to prove that you've never called anyone else out in public. All right. And this is where it's really important to be consistent. This isn't something you do to target one staff member, because frankly, that could be, if you make a slip up of wording and it's not calm and professional, then you could get in trouble. But the truth is, if this is just something you normalize, that we treat each other like this, and when we don't, when things get out of hand, we'll call it and we'll say something. That is a cultural norm that nobody can say that you targeted them, right? So this is about clarity. This is about consistency, and everybody knowing that this is our expectation, and everybody here can call people out on that. So can you do it in real time? Yes. Okay. If it happens again, you can call it out in the moment. Again, remember, we want people around us to feel safe too, and their safety matters as much as the other person does. But obviously, if this is a pattern, if this isn't a one-off, or if this isn't they were having a bad day, then we really do need to take that becoming a performance management thing, which of course does come behind closed doors. All right. So I think that's just worth differentiating between when you're performance managing is when you are having ongoing conversations about your expectations and how they're not meeting them. But this, just calling out, saying, hey, dude, nah, that's not how we treat each other around here. That's not performance management. That's just clearing up an expectation in the room. Yeah. So I hope that helps a little bit, okay? The line will be different for people with low levels of self-reflection. They will perceive being targeted, particularly if it is a new thing that you're calling out. If you haven't historically had the skills or the courage to have these conversations, and now suddenly you are, that can, and people have been getting away with this, and people now think that they're top dog because nobody's been calling them out on this for years or months. We're going to touch on at the end, if you are in that position and you're worried about this being something, a risk for you, we're going to touch on at the end how to go about it beforehand. All right. And how we have a clear conversation amongst the team before you start doing these things. If you think you're far enough down the line that people are going to get a massive shock. Okay. So the big thing you all came here for is the how to do it. Yes. The actual in the moment, what am I going to say that's not going to create drama, not going to blow up in the face, but makes it really clear, no, we don't talk to each other like that, or we don't treat each other like that in this team. And there's the 3 steps, nice and easy to remember. Acknowledge it. That is the naming it. You call it out for what it is. You anchor it. That just means why is this problematic? What is the expectation, or what is that is a problem about what you just saw? Okay. And the ask. The reason we do an ask at the end is twofold. Firstly, it makes it much lower conflict. Okay. If you end on a statement of your beliefs, your interpretations, it kind of sets it up that I know more than you. Whereas if we ask the question and we put it back to them, we're coming from a place of genuine curiosity. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt and an opening to explain themselves. But secondly, what it really does is it lowers conflict and lowers defensiveness by offering them the out to save face. All right. So we're effectively leaving it open to go, ball in your court. How far do you want to dig this hole? And some people that are really ingrained in their behaviors will dig deeper. And you can just go right back to acknowledge, anchor, ask, acknowledge, anchor, ask. Most people, though, feel pretty dumb when they've kind of had it acknowledged and it called out in public. And they take your save face offer. So that's all a bit vague, right? But I just want to put that up there. These are the 3 steps you want to remember: acknowledge, anchor, then ask. What does that really look like? That looks like acknowledging, oh, that tone sounded a bit sarcastic. Acknowledge. It's just what you saw, how it came across to you. Okay. So we try to be neutral tone, but also try to give the benefit of the doubt of like, oh, I interpret it, or that sounded, or that felt, or I noticed. Okay. Rather than you were being mean. All right. You're much better off using a term that's like, that felt like it hit mean. All right. So we're acknowledging what happened in a fairly neutral but clear way. Anchor it. That's not really how we talk to each other around here. Okay, so coming back to either a cultural norm or a team expectation or our values. So you might be, oh, that doesn't really align with our values. Or if there isn't clear team expectations around this, you could just simply say, that could upset some people. Why is this inappropriate? Or some people might interpret that sounded defensive. All right, so acknowledging it, what is it? Anchor it in the why is that problematic behavior? And then we turn it on them. We ask the question, we give them an opportunity to save face, which is, did you mean it to sound that way? Or do you want to try again? Or can we come back to the conversation at hand? Or is there something you want to talk about? So we're now opening the floor to them because we're showing them, I'm curious, have I interpreted that right? Okay, because this is what makes it low conflict. This is what makes it, I'm not picking on you, I'm asking you a question and I'm giving you the opportunity to save face, which is what we're really doing. But as far as it sounds, we're giving them the opportunity to explain where they're coming from. But we're also trying really hard because remember, so much of the incivility behaviors are kind of those passive aggressive behaviors, right? They're kind of as if they've got a problem with something, but they're not willing to air it. They're not willing to say it. And we all know these people. Like they're the people that have the meeting after the meeting where they sit there quietly and say that they agree with your new policy. And then immediately after the meeting, they have another meeting with their friends about what a shit policy it is. This is what we're talking about effectively, right? So what we want to do as well is try to bring whatever it is that they're bringing to the table. We're trying to air it, okay? Even if you think that that's going too far and that person is volatile and might air it in an inappropriate way or time, you could simply make your ask to be, should we talk about it after the meeting? All right. If you were like, acknowledge, oh, that sounded like a frustrated comment. Anchor being, it's not that constructive if we don't get everything out on the table before we make a decision. Do you want to talk about it now or do you want to talk about it after? Does that make sense? So I'm going to go to the next slide, which is basically just a slide of a bunch of words. It's just examples of the sorts of things you can say. If you want, after this, there's a QR code that you can get the presentation so that you can get those kind of lists of ideas of things to say if you want to. But just to sort of let you sit with that for a minute, I'll let you have a bit of a read of some examples of ways you could approach depending on what they've said. So examples of acknowledging, we're just stating it neutrally. What did I say? Oh, I noticed there was an eye roll just then when Sarah was speaking, or that tone came out a bit sarcastic, or your body language suggests you might not have meant what you just said, or oh, your tone suggests you've got some strong feelings around this. Okay, so our interpretation, but neutrally framed, we're not poking them. It's just sort of oh, that felt or that sounded or I interpreted. Okay, for those listening along at home that don't have the visuals, ideas for anchoring, because this is the step that's the most confusing. All right, so really does depend a little bit on what setting you're in. Are you in a team with really strong, clear expectations around values? Or if you're fumbling around those and it hasn't been reset for a while, then we might actually need to ask some questions in the anchoring state. But things like, even if you don't have clear expectations, some just societal expectation foundations are fine. Let's keep this space respectful while we work through challenges. Or conversations that aren't constructive don't help us solve the problem. Or it's okay to feel frustrated. It's just not okay when that impacts others. So really, if you can be specific, it helps. Our team values are we speak to each other respectfully, or that's not how we do things around here, because you can be really clear that this is an expectation that I have some say in and some control over, and I'm going to hold you to it. But if you can't, anything generic is fine. Okay. And then the last examples are the things that you can ask. So open it back out, offer them the opportunity to backtrack. So is this something we need to talk through about this? Or can we rewind and try that again? Is that how you meant it? Or can we bring it back to what we're trying to solve here? Or that one that we can take it offline if you think that person is a little bit prone to causing drama and you're not ready for that right now. You've still made the point in front of everybody. I am not allowing that behavior to stand. If you say something like, I think there's a deeper issue here, I'll follow up with you offline. That kind of, I've made it clear to everybody because it's everyone else in the room we're really doing this for, right? So you can still make that clear without necessarily opening up for them. All right. And the point that I've got at the bottom is that if you're in doubt, if you panic, if you can't remember the words and you're fumbling over them and you just got to say something, because you do, that is the most important thing here, is that you say something. So if you skip the step in the middle because you don't know how to anchor it, that's okay, all right? It's nicer when you can anchor back to team values, but if you can't, just acknowledge it and ask the question. because you can do that quickly with almost no brain power, even when you're quite panicked. You can have generic 2 or 3 versions of this that you practice over and over in the mirror. If this is the sort of thing that gets your adrenaline up and you fumble over your words when you're in high conflict situations, just have 2 or 3 statements with a question on the end that you can pull out of your hat at any generic. So it could be, oh, that hit a little bit odd. Do you want to try again? Or that sounded a little off. Did you mean it that way? Or that felt a little hurtful. Did you intend that? So even if they're quite generic, to get the practice up until this scares you a bit less, do you still see how the point is to name it and then open the conversation for their saving face? All right. Let them have another go. Because if you just say, that sounded sarcastic, Karen, don't do that again, they're going to argue with you. That wasn't sarcastic. I didn't. Whereas if you kind of open it as if you assumed that they didn't mean it that way and you assume positive intent, they can't really argue with you now. They're kind of stuck between, do they save face and backtrack, or do they make a thing of this? Some of them may choose to make a thing of this, but then you just go back to acknowledging, oh, it does sound like you were frustrated after all. Would you like to take this offline? Make sense? So again, if you want to scan the QR code at the end, you can get this if you just want some examples. Remember I talked at the beginning about if you think you're in a culture where this has gone unsaid for long enough, that people are going to get a bit of a shock. And you are at high risk of people taking it poorly, then I would do a step before you just suddenly go out there tomorrow and start calling everybody willy-nilly on their crummy behaviors, all right? So I would do a step first, which is getting them to agree that we want to start calling people out on this stuff. So team meetings or whatever kind of setting you have that offers you an opportunity to be together with, you know, a decent proportion of your team, even if it's a morning huddle. Like, it doesn't have to be a huge, we're going to have a meeting about culture, because that just makes it drama again, right? Whereas I think if we can kind of just have it, a small agenda item, or just throwing it out there, guys, somebody mentioned to me, there's been a little bit of passive aggressive comment, ask them questions. Now, this is one of, when I do a lot of leadership training, and one of the big things, as I say, give less statements than you ask questions. All right. You should be spending most of your time asking questions. There's 2 reasons for that. A, you get better information, okay, because your brain is only so good and you can't know all the stuff. But secondly, people can't argue with the things that they decided. All right. And the truth is that even people that do a lot of these behaviors generally lack some self-reflection. And so there is a pretty high correlation in my experience dealing with quite a few of these sort of toxic cultures, that the people who do it most fully believe that you should manage those behaviors in other people. People want change, they just don't want to have to change. So the amount of times that I go in to do a culture review, and the people who are clearly identified as the most toxic and the most incivil are the people who are the loudest about how we should manage the toxic culture around here. So the beauty of that, the opportunity that gives us, is if we sit them in a room and be like, okay, guys, what do you reckon makes a good place to work around here? It's those people who are going to be one of the loudest to say, oh, treat each other with respect. All right. And that gives us a wonderful opportunity to kind of go, all right, let's do that. So we ask them questions. What do you guys think makes a good culture? What makes them feel bad about the place that they work? How do those poor behaviors make them feel? All right. So set them up to have told you that they want you to address these problems, rather than you coming in going, I'm going to start addressing these poor behaviors. Set them up to request it. Okay, so they've gone through a thing where they've said, oh yeah, I hate when people treat me like that, or I hate when people are, passive aggressive, or roll their eyes, or talk over me in meetings. They're asking you for help now. Okay, so you go, oh yeah, okay, it sounds like this is something that you guys would like me to address. Let's talk about what you think I should do. when somebody shows those behaviors. So what you will generally find, and I've done this workshop 15 or 20 times with different teams, and I almost never don't successfully get the kind of right answers, as it were, or some derivative of it, is that you ask them, okay, well, the first time this happens, what would you like me to do about it? And most people say, oh, well, give them the benefit of the doubt. If they're having a bad day and it's, an unusual behavior for them, we'd probably just let it go, right? Like most people think that strike one should be a gentle reminder. Most people think that if it's strike two, then you should call them out on it. And you just genuinely out there ask their permission. Okay, so everybody's happy that if someone in this room were to say something passive aggressive, I should tell them that that sounded passive aggressive, and they'll all nod. They always do. Okay. And then the third thing you ask, okay, well, what do you think I should do if this is a repeated behavior and they haven't changed when I have told them that that sounded passive aggressive? And they will usually say, we want you to, give them warnings or fire them depending on this situation. So again, what we're doing is we're getting them to request this. All right. And it sounds, I don't want to say it sounds sneaky, okay? We are setting ourselves up for success, okay? And the likelihood of them giving you different answers to that, as long as you're kind of guiding the conversation, is quite slim. But you're really setting the stage for these new expectations so that next time when, Bob pulls out an eye roll or says something sarcastically or, oh, well, we all know that'll never work. And you say, oh, that sounded really sarcastic, Bob. We agreed as a team that we were going to be professional even when we were frustrated. Did you want to try that again? Now, when Bob turns around and goes, oh, I can't believe you called me out in front of people, you can go, oh, you were in that meeting. We all agreed that this is what you wanted me to do. All right. So it gives you a little bit of fallback for them. Like they can't push back very much. But also remember right at the beginning, we talked about if there was ever going to be a successful suggestion of a grievance, it would be because people felt targeted, that you only did it to them. Whereas now you've done this exercise where you've all agreed this is how we will treat everybody. You're effectively covering for that scenario. All right. So don't use this to trap people. We're not using this to target people. We're using this to set clear expectations. Yeah. Some of you might have seen my blog this week around lines that hold the line around most people think that the reason that they're quite nervous about courageous conversations or awkward things is because they feel like they have to win, right? They have to make their point. They have to convince the other people that they're right. And so then as soon as that other person defends or deflects or distracts or, oh, no, well, it was because such and such said this, or, oh, yeah, but she did it first, or, oh, yeah, but, the policy's bad, or, oh, you didn't train me in that. You guys have all tried to have a difficult conversation, right? You've gotten all or at least one of those responses. They're not even doing that on purpose. They're not on purpose trying to deflect. They just, when we are uncomfortable, human nature is, make this discomfort go away. What else can I put this on? What can I blame? What can I make outside of my control? All right. So it's just human nature. They're not being a twit on purpose. It is just life. But this is where it becomes really important to not try to argue with them, to not try to be right. Okay, because the more we defend our position, the more we try to, explain why we are more right than they are, the more we kind of blur what the original conversation was about anyway. But also, right at the beginning, I talked about safety. People actually want to know where the boundary is. People want to know, even if they think that they want you to be softer and to give them more leeway, what people need is the safety and security of, I know what the expectations are and I know where the line is. And this is what we're giving them by not defending. Now, that doesn't mean you can't explain, okay? We've got this policy because X. Of course, we should always let people in on the Y. That's powerful. It's more about when they're trying to deflect and distract and make it all about something else or someone else, or particularly they turn it back on you and say, well, you didn't tell me, you didn't train me, or it's because you treat me this way. These are the times for those lines that hold the line. You don't have to win the conversation. You just have to hold the line. So that can sound like, for those that are listening along, not reading along, here's some lines that can work. I hear that you're frustrated, and we can unpack that, but we still need to be on the same page about the behavior. Okay, so you're not ignoring them. You're not like, oh, I don't care if it's about a crap policy. I don't care if you weren't trained, or I don't care if you're frustrated, or I'm ignoring you if you think that I'm a poor leader. It's about, I hear you and I'm willing to talk about that, but not right now, because right now we're going to go back to the point, and you just keep bringing them back. So I have sat through conversations where I have said, repeat, like actually verbatim, not even changed my language because I was getting frustrated at this point, was, I hear you, please book a meeting to talk with me about that, but today we're talking about you. I have said that 10 or 12 or 15 times in the same meeting because they were so uncomfortable with what I was trying, the boundary I was trying to hold. I was a new leader. They had not had any boundaries held for quite some years. And so this person just didn't know what to do with this discomfort of being called out on something that she didn't think I could call her out on. You know, people think that you can manage their performance, but if they're a great clinician and they're doing a good job, then they're safe, they're protected. And I was trying to explain, well, that's not true. You also can't make other people uncomfortable. You also need to contribute to the positive culture of this team. And this person had not heard that before. So there was a lot of resistance. And I just sat there and said, I hear you. I'd love for you to book a meeting to talk with me about that. But today we're talking about you. So other lines, again, these are the same things. There's a lot to be learned from how we treat our toddlers. I'm comfortable with your feelings, but not your behaviors. Okay? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, we're not allowed to express our feelings in the workplace. Yes, you are. I'm happy to hear all of your feedback, and I'm happy for you to be frustrated with things and talk to me about that. It's the how that matters. All right? So always coming back to, we can talk about that later, but it's not changing. Can you hear the kind of repetitive nature of all of those different things? Is, I hear you, I'm willing to talk about that, but not now. Let's talk about this. Okay, we come back to the point. Again, these are generally the ones that you're going to have once you're behind closed doors, because this has become a repeated behavior, or if you've had to take it offline. But these sorts of lines, I cannot stress to you how much they remove your frustration. Okay, if you don't feel like you have to win, that you have to convince them that your policy is correct, or your training was adequate, or your leadership is fine, or if you don't get frustrated by the fact that you felt like you needed to defend those things, or you felt like you needed to be open to feedback. So when they put it back on, oh, but it's because of your leadership, and now you feel like you have to justify, oh, I'm sorry, I want to talk about that. Let's talk about my leadership. I'm always happy to accept feedback because psych safety and all of those things. Bollocks. Okay. All of those things matter. Psych safety and being willing to appreciate feedback as a leader do matter, but not today. All right. Not in the middle of this conversation. So you do not have to win. You just have to hold the line. Right. The last point I want to make is, who can you do this to? All right. I do a lot of training on this sort of stuff and interpersonal relationships with teams themselves. So these skills are useful for managers, but actually these skills are equally important with your colleagues. Okay. So you can call out your colleagues that mansplain or talk over you, or do the passive aggressive, or always poo-pooing your ideas, or or are gossiping about their staff, because that's uncool too. You can be someone that calls that out, even if they don't report for you, because all of this stuff, you don't have to anchor to, I'm your boss and I said so. You can anchor to, our organization's policy is, or our values are, or just society expects, or just skip the anchor line and go straight from acknowledge to ask, which is, Tony, that sounded a little condescending. Did you mean it to? All right. So you don't just have to use this with staff. And the reason I say that is because I believe fully, I am fully in that camp, that culture is everybody's job. Okay. And the reason that when I'm doing an interpersonal skills workshop with a staff team, the active bystander training includes the ask, anchor, acknowledge thing. So what is an active bystander? Depressingly, very tragic story. The term was coined. There was a murder in the 1980s in New York where a young woman was murdered loudly over a period of more than, like an hour or something, like as in the perp left and came back to the scene. But she was murdered in the open courtyard area of an apartment building where dozens of people heard this happening. Dozens of people could hear and or see what was happening, and nobody called the police. All right. Now, in the decades since this happened, there's some suspicion that maybe they did call the police and the police covered it up or whatever. But nonetheless, when it all happened, there was a lot of reports written about this and some science kind of done on why do people not intervene? And for the most part, the answer is they all thought someone else would or should. Okay. And of course, they didn't want to get their safety at risk for someone else. So, what we're trying to do when we give people permission to do this with their colleagues, so firstly, we have to create conditions of psychological safety where they don't feel like their safety is at risk by doing so. And that is why we role model. We do it first to show it's okay to do this, and I want you and expect you to do this. All right, so they have to feel safe. But then the other one is, oh, well, someone else will, or somebody else should. That's the excuse, I guess, that we want to take away from them. We want to explain that culture is everyone's job. And in fact, if you use the definition of culture that suggests it's what happens when the boss isn't in the room and nobody's reading a policy, the most powerful moments of cultural turnover is when the boss isn't in the room. So when you're not there, how people treat each other, whether there's gossip, whether there's passive aggressiveness, whether there's negativity or not, you can't control it because you weren't there. And this is why we put so much of the culture stuff back on the team. And a huge part of convincing them that their role in creating a thriving culture is to give into the thriving culture so that they can take out. We do encourage them to be active bystanders and call people out in the same way because the behavior they walk past is the one that they are accepting is the culture of the place that they work. So active bystanders, you can do this sideways. And if you're brave enough, you can also do this upways. All right. I've had to call a boss or two out on, oh, that sounded, either, only once when it was something that they'd said to me. But I have heard my boss, for example, gossip about their peers. And I have had to say, oh, that sounds like, gossip. I'm not comfortable talking about people when they're not in the room. Or, hey, don't we have a no triangles rule in this organization? It's harder. I'm not going to lie to you. There's absolutely no doubt that it's harder. But because the whole idea with this approach is that it's low conflict and it allows them to save face and you are genuinely asking from a place of curiosity. Well, did you mean that? You can use it. Up to you whether you will. I highly recommend it on your team. Strongly recommend it on your colleagues and peers. I'll leave it there for whether you want to use it on your boss or your children. Okay. Look, if this sort of stuff has been useful for you, if you found this to be practical, if you found this to be the sort of stuff that you just wish somebody would tell you the actual answers for how do I do this stuff in a way that is meaningful and realistic in the world that we actually do live in, the jobs that we actually have, and the way people actually work, then I would love to invite you to consider joining our mastermind, which is starting in the next couple of weeks. It's called People, Leadership and Practice, and it is very specifically only for veterinary and healthcare leaders. We usually have a good mix of both of those different professions, everyone from allied health to hospital managers to practice managers to head clinicians to head nurses, and aspiring leaders as well. And it's really designed to give exactly the sort of stuff that I always felt like was missing when I was trying to not just even be a new leader, but even when I'd been doing it for a while and I felt really awful that I didn't feel confident to have difficult conversations or to assess the culture or work out why things kept going around in circles. So if this sort of stuff feels useful for you, I'm happy to offer 20% off for having watched this webinar. Just use that QR code and you'll get all of those practical content sessions as well as drop-in hours, which basically means I am at your disposal should you wish to drop in and discuss an issue that you've been having, a difficult conversation you need to prep for, something you need to plan for your boss, or even just what you want to do next in your career trajectory and how to get there. That's exactly what I am there for. So we alternate between full-on content sessions where we go really deep into how we're going to actually get stuff done, how we're going to make change, how we're going to be the sort of leaders that we wanted to be when we started this journey. And then we have hot seats, we have case studies, we have, you bring your problems to the table, you learn from your colleagues. There's also unlimited chat support in a group, which we all contribute to. You can ask questions, you can get, voice responses or message responses from me, but also your peers. And those peers will be people that help you realize you are not alone. And the people that after the program's finished, you can go to and still have that network of people to go, I've got a stupid question, or can I practice this difficult conversation with you because I am nervous, or just, oh my God, this issue is driving me mad. How would you deal with this? And that's exactly what we are missing in leadership these days, is that community that has each other's backs, that understands what we're all going through and really wants to be there to help without being inside your organization where you feel like you can't share or you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. So this is really about giving us all the tools and the opportunities, not just to learn from one person, but to learn from each other. So feel free to use that QR code in the next couple of days because the program starts very soon and I'd really love to see some of you there. It is no superfluous mumbo jumbo. It is, let's just do this. Let's actually be the sort of leaders that we hoped to be. I really hope to see you there. Mostly, I want you to remember, you don't have to win the conversation. You only have to hold the line and ask, anchor, acknowledge for as many situations as you can, no matter how big, no matter how small, even if it's via email. I've done this via email before. All right, you can do it. All right, opening to questions. I'll leave that slide up just for another second in case anybody does want to scan for the presentation, if you want those cheat sheets, and I will open up the chat. Forgive me, the chat negotiation when I've got the 3 different platforms running does take me a second. I will. All right, if you do have any questions, feel free to prop them in the chat. David? Yeah, hi. Yeah. So David's asking about the legalities piece, okay, and the could it be bullying, which I know scares a lot of people. I genuinely, I've been in this situation. I get it. It's more about, remember, there's a couple of things that it has to be bullying, all right? It has to be targeted, has to be repeated, okay? These are the situations that, remember, set yourself up for success. If you think you are at high risk because your team is high conflict and this is a cultural norm now, do your workshop first. Start with them requesting it, okay? But secondly, remember, do it to everybody. Consistency is a good protection here, okay? And also, just remember, yes, we're calling them out, but we're always being polite and professional, right? So we're not picking on them as an individual. We're being polite and professional and asking them a question, yeah? Vanessa on Teams is asking, what tips, advice can you give for calling out poor behavior upwards? I don't feel it's safe to do so, but I feel like it's just normalizing bad behavior. Very valid question. Yeah, okay. So, all right. Upwards is harder, like I said, particularly when you're talking about normalizing bad behavior. I assume perhaps you mean that that person is doing this in front of other team members. All right. I would probably start with this in private. Okay. And I would start with it, in the same way we talked about with the team, we might set you up for success by letting them get their expectations clear. I would probably do largely the same with a manager behaving this way. And I would sort of set yourself up for success by asking them their thoughts on it. Hey, I just wanted to talk. I feel like we've had a little bit of incivility or, unprofessional stuff going around the office lately. Can I get your thoughts on how you think best to handle it? They'll say, oh, yes, it's totally unacceptable. At which point you can go, okay, so do you think we should call each other out? Like, what's the best way? How do you feel about being called out? Like, effectively try to open it for them to tell you what they would do for someone else. But also, sometimes just simply having that conversation might give them the subtle enough hint that they need to pull their head in, particularly if you say something about, oh, I really want to role model good behavior. Depending on your manager's level of self-reflection, hopefully they might be like, oh yeah, okay, I can sometimes gossip a little bit too. Maybe we'll both make an effort together and call each other out. Maybe I don't know, your boss, giving them the benefit of the doubt too much, but sometimes that works. But basically what you've also done is you've set yourself up for, hey, remember we had that chat about what we should do if people were being a bit incivil? I feel like this is one of your moments. Share my QR code again. Yes, I can. So yeah, I know that that's not as easy as it sounds, Vanessa. I'm sorry. You feel free to give me a call if you want to talk through any specifics, or we can work it through together if you like. Now on Teams, Jenny, you've got your hand up. Is that to ask a question, or is that from earlier when you were giving me a thumbs up? Lauren, yeah, on Facebook, Lauren. Does the course cover this stuff? Yes, this almost this specific slide is in the course, but we do go into a lot more detail and we workshop the specific things that are going on for you, and we kind of give you homework, as it were, to go away and do it. And then the beauty of the course, because it's got that unlimited chat support, is you kind of send around, okay, this is what I think I'm going to say. And then, oh my God, it happened and it went tits up. What should I have done differently? It's really about, yeah, okay, the content is there. And, the webinar, I hope, has been helpful in terms of good content, but it's really about what are you going to do with it and how are you going to use it and how can we help you troubleshoot and have the courage to do it? Because it's often the balls that really matter, isn't it? Yep. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, I will send the recording out, and hopefully if you did that, oh, hang on, there's a couple coming through now. Teams, what if someone gets more aggressive after being called out? Yeah, perfect. So, and that does happen. There are some people who feel really put on the spot and defensive, which is why, of course, the question at the end is so important. The really opening, give them the saving face opportunity. But really, if somebody escalates from there, you do the same thing. Ask, anchor, acknowledge, which, I mean, so acknowledge, anchor, ask. So you might go, oh, okay, it sounds like this has frustrated you a little bit. That's distracting from what we need to talk about. That's your anchor there. Would you like to have a chat with me about this afterwards? All right. So it's really go through the AAAs again, but this time with your question a lot more, you're giving them the solution. Okay. Okay, let's take this offline now. Again, though, even though it sounds really terrible, it's not the end of the world when somebody gets aggressive about this, because when we're talking about the reasons we do this, it's not mostly for them, it's for everyone else in the room. So if somebody does go sky high with being called out, firstly, everybody is acutely aware that they are in the wrong, not you. But also, they've seen you call it because they've probably been wishing they could call it for a while, and they have seen you hold the line. Remember, you're not going to argue with them because you don't have to win, you only have to hold the line. So you do not enter an argument. All right. You just simply go, oh, this sounds like it's hit a nerve. It's not going to help us get through today's conversation. Let's talk after. So that is, again, everyone else in the room who we're really doing this for, hearing you hold the line with courage and calmness and clarity. And they now know, possibly for the first time ever, that that person is going to be talked to about their behavior. Because you can talk to about that person behind closed doors about their behavior as many times as you want, but people think that you're ignoring it. Whereas you've clearly made the point, this isn't going unaddressed. Talk to me after. All right, so I know it's uncomfortable, and for those of us that are low conflict, it can really make the adrenaline spike and your cheeks will go red and your heart rate will race. And that's why it's helpful sometimes to have practiced a couple of AAA statements that you can just pull out without thinking. Hold the line. Do not enter an argument about it. Yeah. Okay, what if somebody says they don't wish to continue because they don't feel safe or comfortable with the demand? Hang on, just scrolling back up. And demand the conversation stop, which you respect. However, the top is performance issue and needs to be addressed. How do I reapproach that conversation? Yeah, okay. Happens all the time. This particular webinar is a little bit about, the in the moment calling out. I do have another webinar about performance conversations, which is very specifically like half of it's what to say and then the other half is what to say when that doesn't go to plan. And again, that's the stuff that we cover in our courses. But really the top tip here is you need to use your judgment because there's two different pathways. If you think that their safety is genuinely at risk, okay, or if they say something that says that their conversation, that this is genuinely a risk to their safety, you need to stop it, unfortunately. But you can still hold the line, which is, I can see you're overwhelmed by this. Do you need to take the rest of the day, or, do you want to pause? We will continue this tomorrow. Okay. It's about being really clear. I can see this is hard for you. I want to make, I'm going to help you. Would you like to bring a support person with you next time? Or would you like to do things differently? Or how would you feel more comfortable we address this? And then, of course, when you start the next conversation, always ask, is there anything I can do to make you more comfortable? Is there anything you need from me? Is there any way you would prefer to handle this conversation? So it's about, I'm still having the conversation. I'm holding my line, but I am trying to cater to you as much as is feasible. All right. But you do have to check their actual safety first. All right. And sometimes we just have to prioritize that. But you can still be clear, because I've had people that have every single time I've booked in a meeting, they've gone off sick. And, I've had people that have gone off on 2 months of sick leave because of the stress of these conversations. And that's fine. They need to do what they need to do to protect their mental health. But you can still say, when you are back on board, we will still talk about this, okay? And then when they are back, say, how are you feeling? What do you need from me? Is there anything else we as an organization can do? No? Okay, let's go back to the conversation. It sucks. It is a crummy reality, but again, that holding the line without needing to win. How do you handle people that go into specifics for everything, defending? Yeah, this is why I keep going back to don't try to win. Just hold the line. So I don't ask any questions. I just go, that's an interesting conversation for another day. Back to today. That's an interesting point. Back to today. Oh, I'd love to talk to you about that. Not today. I agree. These conversations are very frustrating, and keeping your cool is really tough. But again, if you just like it sounds awful, but by the third or fourth time you say it, you sound a little condescending. And I don't know how to get around the fact that you sound a little condescending the fourth time you've said, sounds interesting, but not today. I've been in that exact same situation where it keeps derailing and they keep giving all of these details and they want to come back to this time 4 years ago when actually the policy was different, or well, this person did this thing first, but back then, and then I had to do this, and that's why I've done this workaround. Just say, would love to talk about that. Book a meeting with me. Because of course they don't. Like they're only using it as a distraction. So they don't actually want to set aside the time to raise changing the policy or improving the training. They just are feeling uncomfortable. And they know that this subconsciously, usually, not even on purpose, they just know that this distracts you. They don't have to get deeper into the discomfort if they keep going other ways. So we're just holding the line without needing to win. You don't have to convince them. You don't have to show them why everything you're doing is right. You just have to come back to, oh, sounds interesting. Talk about it another day. Cool. All right. Well, it was lovely to spend an hour with you. Sorry again about this morning's email error. I'm a leadership person, not an admin person. I don't have skills in that space. But you will get a recording of this in the next 24 hours as well. Anybody that does want the presentation, any feedback, of course, we're always very welcome to it. Or you've got till the end of the week to sign up for one of my programs at 20% off. My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Yeah.